Hello, this is Paul Isaacs and this is my 7th video for YouTube, and I've entitled my YouTube channel Autism Information Channel, so this is my 7th video with regards to classic autism. To put it in perspective, I got a diagnosis of high functioning autism in 2010 of this year, and I wanted to have the chance to explain the differences from a developmental point of view between high functioning autism and Asperger's syndrome. Now, high functioning autism is altogether a different developmental journey. For me personally, and for others who have got this diagnosis, it is very, very different from the other form of high functioning autism, Asperger's syndrome. For instance, in my early development I had speech delay, and one of the things I used to say in sort of a monologue, a singular word, was nan, 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 like that, incoherently. This wasn't even perceived as language from my point of view. It was a sound. It wasn't, there was no meaning there whatsoever. I came out with other strands of babble, really, incomprehensible from my perspective. They were words, but to me they were just sounds, and this happened a lot during my younger years. It was a lot to do with sounds and not associating them with meaning, and therefore not with language. The language, there's a clear delay in language and understanding language as a tool to communicate. That's the first thing. What came in as I got older was echolalia, which I've explained in a previous video, and it was delayed echolalia, where I would look at a video, for example, and I would parrot the phrases of the characters. I also mentioned echopraxia as well, because I'd also mimic the movements. This was very much an intense, very insular interest, although I did enjoy doing this. I also, when I was younger, I didn't have a clear perception of family. I didn't really understand family as a social tool, or family as the togetherness of a family. And looking back reflectively in those early years, I didn't see my parents in the conventional way that some other children, neurotypical children, would see their parents. I just saw them as people. I didn't have that instant connection that they were my parents because of my very singular and very autistic way of perceiving the world. It was very much Paul's world for the first 7 years of existence. It was very much a very classically autistic child from their perspective, although they didn't have the words or the information then. That's certainly what it was. Language was not important in the sense of meaning, but actions within my own interests would be the paramount of my excitement, the paramount of the day, and would be of the utmost importance. Of course, this is me looking back in a reflective way, but that is how I was processing. So I gave the example of when I was at play school and I didn't interact with the children at all. I just used to run around and used to play with puzzles, and that was all I liked to do. When I got into year 3, I can remember being amazed by water, and there was this litre bottle of water with pinprick holes in it, and I used to play with that endlessly, looking at the waters coming out of the spouts and being amazed by the sounds and by the reflectiveness of the water. If the sun was hitting the water, it would excite me, a um, sensory excitement and interest. I can remember being amazed by Play-Doh and playing with textures, tactile textures, and being amazed by colours, and by colours were a big thing. Bold colours. My favourite colour was red, I can remember, and I liked those bold primary colours. I can remember now quite specifically when I was younger. That was a very sensory thing. People were not my priority at all. I wasn't in the sense of an Asperger's child, the very autocratic little professor. I wasn't like that at all. I was very, what one would call, withdrawn within their own little world, which continued for many years until there was a developmental milestone, which obviously I have to go into during this video to give the context of high functioning autism. And that happened when I was 7. For whatever reason, my speech improved. It could have been to do with social recognition or cognitive reasoning or genetics, or a mix of all three possibly, where my speech got better. Some of my recognition, emotional and social, got improved, and there was a clear sort of slant upwards in terms of development. But one of the key differences is what happens when you're an adult, and what differences are present when you're an adult with high functioning autism. I would say perception is the clearest difference in my mind, and the best example I can give, the simplest example I can give for people watching, is I do tend to find from observation that people with high functioning autism have a more sort of less obvious logic. It is present, but it's not as obvious as someone with Asperger's syndrome. It's more based within fantasy and science fiction, and very much a fantasy, very fantastic, fictional sort of world, which is sort of forgive me, it's hard to explain. It's very much, it's not as obvious to the eye or to the ear that there's any sort of logic there, but there is, and that's, from my observation, that is one of the key differences. It's a perception of interest, how you speak, because of the speech delay and because of how you progressed in a different manner, and you also have differences in maybe motor coordination also. Maybe the sensory issues are more heightened and more attuned because of being classically autistic as a child. But nevertheless, what I have tried to do, which I always try and incorporate into my speeches, is to keep positive, to keep trying to understand what autism is, to help others, and I hope these videos continue to help others, and I hope I've given a clear definition, in my opinion, of the differences between high functioning autism and Asperger's syndrome. Thank you very much.